and they began to be rediscovered in the 10th century. Some monk scholars among the Buddhists were saying, oh, these are all just plagiarized from Buddhist texts, and particularly this Lama Shenchen Lujao, who lived in the 11th century. He faked all of this. He found the largest collection of Bonpo termas in the year 1077. He came from East Tibet, from Kham, but he belonged to the Shen clan. And he went to the old lands that belonged to the Shen clan in Sang province. And while he was meditating there, the Dakinis appeared to him, as happens when someone's meditating. And they said, go look on these rocks. There's something there for you. He borrowed some money to get a pickaxe. He started digging there. He found 2 large wooden boxes with some 300 Bonpo texts in there. It's the largest single discovery. Well, some Buddhist scholars say, well, he faked all this. Well, the Kamchen he found there, which is the Bonpo version of the Prajnaparamita, in 16 volumes, whereas the Buddhist Prajnaparamita is only in 12 volumes, so it's even bigger. And according to Yongzheng Rinpoche, okay, Shenchen Luga, he could read and write, he knew a few prayers, but he was not a big scholar. He couldn't have possibly faked all these books, or if he actually did, he's a world-class genius. But then most of the Tertans at this time were not lamas at all. In fact, there's a story about the 3 Atsaras. 3 Atsaras were 3 guys from Kathmandu, Nepalis, who were thieves. And they had heard that in Tibet there was lots of gold, so let's go up there and get some gold. So at this time, Samye Monastery was padlocked and had been closed down by the government. So they went around behind, put a ladder up in the wall, climbed over, and broke into a small temple at the back end of Samye. And in there they found a wooden box, and it was heavy. So these guys said, this must be filled with gold. So they got it out, and they got it over the wall, and they took it to a village nearby, and they broke it open, and they found only Tibetan books inside. They were very disappointed. But there was a Bonpo Lama in the village, so they took a couple of these books. These guys, Nepalis, they couldn't read or write in Tibetan. So they took it to him, and he immediately recognized this as a Bonpo text, and he paid some gold for it. So they said, okay, books are worth something, even used books. And so they took it off to the nearest big town, where there were 3 Bonpo Lamas there, and they offered these books for sale. And the Lamas bought them for gold and a horse, and then these 3 Atsaras went back to Kathmandu very happy with the money. Well, otherwise there were hunters, there were farmers. People like this would find these texts. Obviously, these Tertans did not write these texts themselves. And this was the usual situation in the 11th century. Now, Shenchen Luka, he found this big collection. There were Dzogchen texts there, principally the Gupagukor. There were practices for Sipa Jalmo, many things. And he belonged to one of the 6 traditional Bonpo families or clans. The first being the Shen clan, or Mushen, which is said to be the family of Trungpa Shenrup. Mu meaning celestial or the sky in the Zhangzhung language, and Shen being the name of the clan. There was the Dru clan, which came from Drusha, or that's Gilgit in Pakistan. There's the Pa clan, the Zhu clan, the Meu clan, and later the Chungpo clan was added to this. So in the early days, especially before there were many monasteries, the Bonpo teachings were passed down through family lineages. So you take something like the Bonpo Book of the Dead, or probably Shitro, you have different traditions. You have the Druluk. This is the system according to the Dru clan for the practice of the peaceful and wrathful deities, but you have the Horluk and the Juluk and so on, different ones. Well, anyway, Shenchen Luga took a number of disciples. One of them belonged to the Dru family, Namka Yungdrung, and his son, Chungye Gyaltsen. And he gave them all the philosophical books, that is, Tsenyi, for philosophy. In particular, the Sipa Terpuk, which is the big book on cosmology. And that's interesting because the original root text in the Zhangzhung language survives with a Tibetan translation and also a commentary written by Drenpa Namkha in the 8th century. Well, one of their descendants, Druje Yungdrung Lama, in 1040, was born in 1040, and in the year 1072, he founded Yeru Wensaka Monastery. This is one of the oldest Bonpo monasteries, and that's in Tsang province, not so far from Sakya Monastery. And because of the interest in Zen, or philosophy, they very much emphasized education, and so it became the leading Bonpo university in Tibet. And then in the end of the 14th century, it was destroyed in a disastrous flood, said to have been brought about by a curse from a Hindu sadhu. But anyway, it flooded, and then Nyemet Sherab Gyaltsen rebuilt it higher up on the hillside in the year 1405, and he changed the name to Menri, the medicine mountain. And subsequently, Menri became the most famous Bonpo monastery and center of education for Yungdrung Bon in Tibet, and many Bonpo monasteries then would send their students there for their postgraduate studies and so on from eastern Tibet. In the 13th century, another member of the Dru family, Jawa Yungdrung, became the abbot, and he's the one who wrote the practice manual for the Zhangzhung Nyenju, and so it's called Jawa Chakri. Chakri means a practice manual, and Jawa, well, this is Jawa Yungdrung. Now, there's various classifications of the Bonpo teachings. One of them is the Goji Dzernga. Goji means the four doors, or four portals, as David Snellgrove translates it. And Dzernga, and the fifth is the treasury. Here the Bonpo teachings are divided into four classes. Basically, the Penyul is the sutra teachings, including the Prajna Paramita, in particular, the Kamchen and so on. Then we have the Chapnak. These refer to the Tantra teachings. David Snellgrove translates that as black water, but according to Yongzin Rinpoche, Chap probably means practice in Zhangzhung language. Now, there's two here, Chapnak and Chapkar. Chapnak, the black practice, Chapkar, the white practice. Now, this is not like black magic here in the West. Black means eliminating negative energy, and Kar, white, means absorbing positive energy. So in the Chapnak, you have all these practices to get rid of negative energies, evil spirits, all this kind of thing. And then in Chapkar, which includes the tantras, is the invoking and drawing into yourself positive energies. And the fourth door or portal here is Prince, and Prince means a spiritual teacher, but here this refers to Dzogchen. All right, that's one classification. Another classification is in terms of the system of the southern treasures, the Hloter Luk. Called southern because they were found in southern Tibet and in Bhutan. And this is the classification of the Tekpa Rimgu, the 9 successive vehicles to enlightenment that you find then in the 9 ways of Bon. Here the 9 ways are divided first into the causal ways, the Jui Tekpa, and here you have 4. The first one dealing with divination and so on. The second with invoking positive energies of the Hua or gods. The third with expelling negative energies. And the fourth with guiding spirits through the bardo and so on. And what to do if some spirit comes and haunts your house. Then you have to do a doer or exorcism practice. This relates to worldly benefits, and so that's why they're classified together. The next are the fruitional practices. This has the higher spiritual goal of liberation from suffering and samsara and the attaining of Buddha enlightenment. Here there are 5. The Genyan Tekpa, this is a practice of ordained lay people, Genyan, and practices such as making stupas and going on pilgrimage, all kinds of practices like this. Drangsong means a monk, and then that is the vehicle with all the rules for monks, nuns, and so on. So those are vehicles 5 and 6. Then 7 and 8, Akar Tekpa, the vehicle of the white A. This is for the lower tantras. And Yeshen Tekpa, the vehicle of primordial practice. This refers to the higher tantras. So Genyan Tekpa and Drangsong Tekpa, this is for the sutra system. Akar Tekpa and Yeshen Tekpa is for the Tantra system. The final one, Lamet Tekpa, that's Dzogchen. Dzogchen is the culmination of Tantra practice, but it goes beyond Tantra or the path of transformation. Now there's also the central treasures system, the Uter Luk. But there's no point in me giving all you the Tibetan names there. The classification rather similar to the Nyingmapa. But here we speak of 4 classes of tantras. And I have translated Yongsen Rinpoche's commentary on Bonpo Tantra and hope I can produce that for publication sometime soon. But briefly, we have 2 lower tantras and 2 higher tantras. The 2 lower tantras are Jaweju or Kriya Tantra. Kriya Tantra means the Tantra of ritual activity, so a lot of external ritual is involved there. The next is Chirpeju, which is Charya Tantra. This is the Tantra of conduct or activity which is both external and internal. And there are yoga practices here and so on. But in both cases of the Kriya Tantra and Charya Tantra, the Yidam meditation deity is visualized outside of yourself. You do not transform into the deity, as we do in higher Tantra practice. Here, the higher tantras are classified as Yeshinju, the tantra of primordial practice, and Yeshin Chempo Ju, the tantra of great or total primordial practice. They are a little different. Dzogchen is emphasized much more in this fourth class, Yeshin Chempo. And Dzogchen in the Bonpo system is the culmination of tantric transformation practice. And this is also true in the Nyingmapa system of Mahayoga and Anuyoga, that Dzogchen is the final stage after you've transformed yourself into the Yidam, in the sacred space of the Yidam, which is a virtual reality, the mandala, and you used up all your psychic energy in this visualization. At the end of that, you relax and dissolve your visualization back into the state of shunyata, tongpanyi, or pure potentiality, and then you have the opportunity to find yourself in yamjak, or contemplation, and realize rigpa, or intrinsic awareness. So tantric transformation practice is one of the ways to get into Dzogchen, but it's not the only way. Now, Yeshin Ju is divided into father tantras, Paju, and mother tantras, Maju. There are 5 principal father tantras corresponding to the 5 aspects of body, speech, mind, quality, and activities. These are the Yidams Walse, Lagur, Tsochok, Gekur, and Purpa, or Walpur Nakpo. The Walse is very popular practice among Bonpo practitioners. Tsochok is the chief of the peaceful and wrathful deities, so this is where we find the Bonpo Book of the Dead and so on. Gekur is the patron deity of Mount Kailas and also the Zhangzhung Kingdom. And Mary is a special form of Gekur, and Gekur means Dudul, he who subdues demons, Dud, in the Zhangzhung language. But in his friend Mary, Meri means fire mountain or volcano. It's a different iconographic form, same Yidam, but he's wearing golden armor and so on in this form of Mary. And I said this is the Yidam meditation deity specifically associated with the Zhangzhung Nyenju. For Zhangzhung Nyenju, this is tantric practice, so there's no empowerment here. The way you enter into the practice of Tantra is Wangkur, or the receiving of an empowerment, which usually takes the form of a ceremony or ritual. But the way of entering into Dzogchen practice is Notro, a direct introduction. And what you're introduced to is Rigpa, that is the intrinsic awareness of your own nature of mind. And in order to get at that, you first need some meditation experience, or otherwise you don't have the foggiest notion of what the Lama is talking about. Because Rigpa is like this mysterious object, like a UFO, which has landed over here in Richmond last night. And you've heard about it, you know, this object over there. But you haven't seen it yet. Okay, so you happen to, of course, the government has already put a security perimeter around it. Well, fortunately, you know one of the people in the Homeland Security Department, so you go over and you speak to him, and he says, oh, yeah, it's over there. So you look through the fence, you see, okay. Well, you come back, to the Cafe Med or someplace in Berkeley, and you tell them about it, and all your friends laugh at you and say, oh, there's no such thing as a UFO. So you go back there, you talk with your friend. He says, okay, I can get you inside. You go inside, and he opens the door, you take a quick peek, and you see the UFO inside. Oh, boom. Shuts the door again. Then you go back and tell your friends, no, and they still don't believe you. They're like, oh, you're crazy. No such thing. So you come back to your friend, and you say, oh, now I have these doubts. I got to see. I'm not sure what I saw there. So this time, he's in charge. So he can open the door, and you can turn on the light, and you can see, oh, yeah. But still your friends don't believe you. So you have to come back again. Well, this time, he's the boss of this site, like Area 51 or whatever they called it, where they used to keep the UFOs there. And so you go in, and this time you can go in, and you can look at it, you can tap, you can touch it, you can smell it, you can taste it, So, all right, and you can walk all around it. So, okay, you've done this. This time you come out, your friends still don't believe you. But because you've come back again and again to see the UFO, now you've had direct personal experience. You know it's there, even if they don't believe you. Well, it's this way with Rigpa, that in the direct introduction, you get a moment of Rigpa, and the Lama points this out to you, that this is beyond your mind, this is beyond your thought process, and so on. But it's not unconsciousness. It's total presence and awareness, but you haven't had that experience before. But he says, hey, this is it. Okay, you see it. But then you go away, and then it's just a memory. And once it's a memory, then doubts can arise, especially when all your friends laugh at you and say, oh, there's no such thing as this Rigpa. So, you have to come in your practice back again and again to experience Rigpa. And in that way you eliminate doubts, and you come to confidence in your experience, confidence. This is what is in the Nyingmapa tradition known as the three statements of Garab Dorje. First you get the direct introduction, then you practice again and again, eliminating doubts, and finally you develop confidence in Rigpa. This is how you get into Dzogchen practice. But with Tantra, we are working with the mind, with the visualization and so on. So you visualize the meditation deity there in the center of the mandala. The mandala is not this flat picture you may see on the wall there. It's a three-dimensional structure. So when you do Tantra meditation, you sit down there, and first you do the refuge and bodhicitta, visualizing, say, the Buddha, or the Buddha as the yidam, or your guru as the yidam, there in the sky in front of you, using your imagination like you're in the presence of this figure. Then you recite the refuge, bodhicitta, and so on. This is the ngundro in a sadhana practice. Then after all that's done, you can sound ah, which is the seed syllable of tongpani, of shunyata, and you dissolve your visualization back into the state of shunyata. How does shunyata look like? Well, it looks like the clear, open sky. But this is not the sky at midnight without the light of moon and stars. This is the sky of midday. So it is open space, but it is filled with the sunlight of awareness. So the natural state then has these two aspects. It has this spatial aspect, which is shunyata, also known as kunshi, and it has this luminosity, clarity, awareness aspect known as Rigpa. And those two are always together. The principle in Dzogchen is not zongjuk, bringing two things together, like pouring milk into water. The principle is inseparability. You have kunchi and you have rigpa, you have shunyata and you have awareness, but they have never been separate. We separate them merely for purposes of human discourse, to help our limited human understanding, but these have always been together from the very beginning. And out of this inseparability of kunchi and rigpa comes cell or energy, because this unification of kunchi and rigpa has its rung cell, its inherent energy. That's why in meditation practice, according to Dzogchen, the principle is not mitopa, simply not to have thoughts, like it is in the sutra system. The principle is to enter into the neluk, into the natural state, and then remain in the natural state. But even in this calm state of mind, there is still the inherent energy of your mind, your rung cell, and therefore in jua will appear the movement of thoughts. But all these thoughts are simply manifestations of the inherent energy of your mind. So then there's no problem. I mean, as Tilopa said, the problem when we're meditating is not that we're having thoughts, but that we get attached to our thoughts. If we just let the thoughts arise and relax, they have a finite quantity of energy, and then that energy will dissolve into the space of our nature of mind. So this is known as rangdol, self-liberation. The method in Dzogchen is rangdol, self-liberation. In Tantra, the principle is jurwa, transformation. Tantra principally emphasizes our dimension, our aspect of energy. And our vision is part of our dimension of energy. That's why there's so much visualization practice in tantric meditation, because visualization is a way of accessing energies and also of transforming energies. And in Tantra, what we're transforming is our impure karmic vision. That is the way we see things now sitting in this room. This vision is part of our total dimension of energy. And it's impure because it's all mixed up with ignorance and with negative emotions. But in our visualization practice, we transform that vision into pure vision, which is the way enlightened beings see things. So if we were doing a tantric visualization here, we would transform this room into a magnificent mandala palace, and very beautifully done architecturally and in terms of decoration and so on, like we're in a movie set. And then we would transform everyone in here into gods and goddesses, looking very beautiful and only 16 years old and in the best of fashions. And we would transform ourselves into the Yidam meditation deity. And we are then in the center of the mandala. In other words, this is a practice like video games that are very popular today, but with a video game, you have things happening on a screen, and we're outside looking at what's going on. But in terms of tantric meditation, we enter into the program, into the video game. In fact, we become the star of the show. We're at the center of it. And so we see everything through the eyes of the Yidam. Now, in Sutra meditation, we have these two aspects of shamatha and vipassana. Shamatha, the calm state of mind. We come to that through doing fixation practice. For example, we choose an object of meditation. In terms of sutra, it doesn't matter what we choose. Conventionally, in Dzogchen practice, we take the white Tibetan letter A, And we use that for our fixation practice. And then that white becomes like a target for our bow and arrow, or nowadays maybe a rifle, and you're aiming. If you've ever done this kind of target practice, you notice how you fixate very strongly on that target, and you're no longer overtly aware of all the other things going on around you. But if you do get distracted by what's going on around you, you will miss your target. Same thing when you're playing golf. You have to remain in that state of presence and awareness, or otherwise you're going to hit the ball into the pond or out into the woods or something. So, when you fixate upon a single object of meditation, you then contract the space or dimension of your mind. You make it much smaller than this. Then there is no room for distracting thoughts to arise. And so you begin always fixating very strongly. You can feel the mental energy that you put into this. But in Dzogchen, the principle is always to relax. In Dzogchen, the point is not mitopa, simply to have no thoughts. The point in Dzogchen is to be present and aware, but relaxed. That's why it's also called lerpachempo, total relaxation. So after fixating on the object of meditation for a few moments, you always relax. When you do, that opens up the space of your mind. So then there's always a potentiality that distracting thoughts can arise. So then you have to focus again very strongly on that object of meditation. But again, you always relax. Now with tantric meditation, we don't have just a static object for meditation, like a white sitting on the wall over there, or even like a figure like Taparitsa, because when we're fixating, okay, that's shamatha, but then the other aspect of meditation is vipassana, or higher insight. And in terms of the sutra system, this means once you have calmed your state of mind, like you have the lake and the winds of distraction have ceased to blow, so the surface of the lake becomes very calm, and then you walk to the shore of the lake and you look into the water, and now you can see the bottom of the water very clearly, and then deep down in the water there's all these very interesting fish swimming around. Like you go to a Chinese restaurant, they have a very large aquarium tank there, and you see the carp and other fish swimming around. So, you just watch them. Well, you see the fish swimming around in the lake of your mind. These fish are your subliminal mental processes. And so by slowing up your mind and allowing it to be calm and clear, you can then observe what is going on beneath the surface of your mind, of which you're normally not aware. This is the origin of Buddhist psychology, also known as Abhidharma, and so on. So you not only have this calm state, but you also have this movement which you observe. In terms of tantric practice, when you do this transformation, you fixate on being the yidam, the meditation deity. That's shamatha. But then there's all this activity going on around the meditation deity. There's puja offerings being made. These lovely puja devis appear, and they bring offerings to you, and they sing nice songs and so on, very entertaining, like American Idol or something like this. And you see all this happening. This is movement. This is vipassana in terms of tantric meditation practice. When you're doing a sadhana practice, You create with your visualization and imagination a virtual reality. This is the mandala. And then you enter into that virtual reality. And if you get good at meditation, for a limited period of time, you find yourself inside that virtual reality as the yidam. Now that yidam represents pure vision. This is a yidam is not a worldly deity like those gods and spirits that live out there in the woods, the other side of the mountain, and so on. They are still samsaric beings like us. Maybe they have subtle energy bodies and so on, but they're not enlightened beings and they're not immortal and so on. Eventually they will die, their consciousness goes into the bardo and then rebirth elsewhere. In fact, when we die for a time, we become a spirit like this. Out of our memories and psychic energy and karma, we create a yilu, a mind-made body for ourselves, which initially looks very much like the body we had when we just died, but it's made of psychic energy, so other people don't see it, even we can see what they're doing and so on. We become irritated with them because they ignore us and so on. But anyway, this happens after we're dead. We don't have to worry about it right now. But anyway, there are these gods and spirits. But that's not what we mean by a yidam. A yidam is a manifestation of enlightened awareness, the enlightened awareness of a Buddha or great Bodhisattva and so on. And these are traditional forms that have existed for long periods of time and have been meditated upon by great masters and realized beings, or siddhas, and so they have a great deal of energy in them. It isn't like if we want to become a powerful magician, we then visualize and meditate upon ourselves as being Harry Potter. Better we choose another figure like Padmasambhava or something, because Harry Potter, although, yes, in a sense it's an archetype, but it's the archetype of the apprentice magician, not the fully realized master, not Gandalf the Grey or something like this. But anyway, it's something that is recent out of pop culture, and there's not much energy in that, whether these old forms, they have a great deal of energy. Now, why meditate upon ourselves in this form? Well, if we meditate upon ourselves as a yidam, which is an archetypal form, we then access the powers, capacities, and wisdoms traditionally associated with that yidam. Whether we think that these are drawn down from a higher spiritual source, from the heavens above into ourselves, like the Christians speak of the Spirit descending and occupying us in a Holy Roller Church, or at Pentecost when the Holy Spirit occupied the apostles, or whether we think of it as arising out of our own nature of mind. The meditation practice stimulates that manifestation, whether it originates outside us or from within us. And for the period of our meditation practice, when we enter into this virtual reality, we can access these capacities and wisdoms, and we can exercise them in terms of enlightened activities. At the end of that, we dissolve that visualization back again into the state of shunyata. And then we reappear looking like we normally do, and then we recite the dedication of merit and so on. Now, this is the method in the Tantras, and that's why it's known as the Palayana, the vehicle of the fruit or result, Because here we take the fruit of result, which is enlightenment in the form of a yidam, and then we make that into the path of our practice by meditating upon it and visualizing ourselves as the yidam. Now, in the beginning, this is not much different than a daydream. But after some time, we increase our capacity, and then we are able much more to exercise those powers, capacities, and wisdoms associated with the yidam. And this greatly accelerates then our spiritual evolution. Traditionally, they say, in terms of the practice of the sutra system, after we have produced the intention to attain enlightenment, which is the bodhicitta, it takes 3 immeasurable kalpas to arrive at Buddhahood. Well, how long is an immeasurable kalpa? An immeasurable kalpa is approximately the lifetime of a universe. According to modern science, the universe began with a big bang about 15 billion years ago, when I don't know what brought about this big bang. Maybe God farted or something like that. But anyway, that was the beginning. And then they say there will be 15 billion more years until the big crunch, and it all comes to an end. It gets reabsorbed. So we can say, all right, a lifetime of a universe about 30 billion years. And then, all right, 3 of them, that's 90 billion years between you produce the bodhicitta for the first time and you get Buddha enlightenment. Well, in 90 billion years, you can have many reincarnations. So this is a long time. But through the practice of Tantra, you can speed that up by visualizing yourself as a yidam. Through doing this, you also create a julu. This is an illusion body. This is your body you occupy as a yidam, composed of psychic energy. Then you absorb that back into your heart chakra, and you hold that there when you go back into your normal life, and you go back to your job and school, etc., etc. But then at the time of death, you remember your yidam, and you do poa, or transference of consciousness into your julu. And when you do that, then you bring the death process under control. You're not totally helpless in the bardo, where the winds of karma blow you around, like a leaf being blown about by the winds in the fall. But you become a yidam and as a julu, and you take control of the bardo, and then you can transfer out of the bardo experience. This is according to Tantra. The view in Dzogchen is again different. In Dzogchen, there's nothing that needs to be transformed, because your Buddhahood is already primordially present within you as the base. In Dzogchen, we speak of Jilam Drepu, the base, the path, and the fruit. And Buddhahood as the base is already within us as Ngoa Rangshin Tukche, that is, as essence, nature, and energy. It has been present there from the very beginning, but we have forgotten about this, and so we find ourselves back in samsara lifetime after lifetime. So this Buddhahood isn't somewhere out there, like we have to go on a holiday to Club Med or something. It's right here from the very beginning, so we have to remember this. And so then in the higher tantras, the principle is not mikpa, visualization, where we construct a virtual reality for ourselves, but the principle is hundra, spontaneous perfection. So we sound the mantra, the bija mantra, the sabra, and then we remember that we are the yidam. We can simply sound ah, or om, or hum, and then immediately, instantaneously, we transform. We remember we're the yidam in the mandala. We don't have to build it up stage by stage. First sounding A and opening up space, and then sounding yam, creating the winds, and then ram, the fire on top of that, and vam, the water on top of that, and lum, then the surface of the earth, and then sum, the cosmic mountain, and then drum, the yidam palace on top of the mountain. You can go that way slowly, but with Dzogchen we can just sound ah, and it's all there. So, a lot easier to do. So, we have this in the Father Tantras, but we also have it in the Maju, the Mother Tantras. The Mother Tantras emphasize the feminine aspect of enlightenment, and here you find the Najordruka, the 6 yogas, which are similar to what we call the 6 yogas of Naropa and the Kajapa system. We find this here in the Mother Tantras. We have, in doing tantric practices, we have the sadhana, the kerim and the zokrim. Now the kerim, which means the generation process, K means generation, creation, production, visualization. And rim can mean stages, but that means a process where things go. So this is the process of doing a visualization. That is creating the mandala and visualizing ourselves to be the yidam. Then that is authenticated and made real by reciting the nyingpo, the heart mantra of the yidam. Every sadhana practice has a specific mantra, which is a sound which then authenticates and makes real and firms up that visualization. So each yidam will have a heart mantra. But then we have visualized ourselves to be the yidam, and we have engaged in the sound of the yidam, which is the mantra. Mantra meaning the creative power of sound. When you sound a mantra, something appears. But the question here is, how does the yidam feel? Well, generally, the yidam feels good. So this is the second stage of sadhana practice, known as dzogchen, the perfection system. This focuses on your feeling as the yidam, in particular tomo, or inner psychic heat. Because this heat is not only hot, but it feels very good. And so you generate this energy, which Hindus call kundalini, and this rises from the lower chakras, fills your entire body, it circulates, and then your whole body becomes filled with deva, or bliss, and you come to realize Detong Yeshe, which is the ultimate realization in tantric practice. That is the primal awareness of emptiness and bliss. Dewa being bliss, that is pleasurable sensation, and Tong being Tongpani, emptiness, and Yeshe meaning primal or primordial awareness. In Western translations, you'll usually see they translate Yeshe as wisdom. But this doesn't tell you very much, because the English word wisdom is dualistic. Now, it's a good translation for the Tibetan word sherab, which is prajna in Sanskrit, because prajna or sherab is a higher intellectual function that makes distinctions. It distinguishes what is real and unreal, true and false, good and bad, beautiful and ugly, and so on. So distinctions are being made there. But in Yeshe, Yeshe is non-dual. There's no duality or distinctions being made here. It's Yene Shepa. It is Shepa, awareness, which occurs at the very beginning. It's primordial, it's primal, Yene. And this is the awareness which is present in any event of consciousness. For example, if you have, you see an object, and so then your sight consciousness is coming into activity. Now, perception, or dushe, is a very complicated process, but before dushe occurs, you have yeshe. This is that immediate moment of awareness, but it is awareness before subject and object arises. It is just a being present as the object. And that occurs in a split second or a moment before the mind starts to work. Then the mind, the yit or manas, means our functional mind, that's our computer apparatus that starts then into work. And that invokes various programs. It starts out with accessing our memory banks and so on, because if we're having an experience, then our mind looks for similar experiences. If we haven't had an experience like this before, then we don't proceed automatically. We focus much more strongly on that experience, thinking, what is this? And so on. Okay, then after we access the memory banks, then we have our word processing program or language, and we invoke that. So each experience we have a name for it, and that name comes up. Then associated with that name, there are certain conceptions, mikpa, and so then that is pulled up. Now that happens very quickly, and this is referred to in this Tibetan word dushe. Shepa means awareness. Dua means to bring many things together. So this is our computer mind, our yit, working. But before that happens, our yeshe has come into operation. Now see, we have this word mind in English, and we usually use that to translate the Tibetan word sem. Sem is the sort of the most general word for mind in Tibetan. But actually in here we have two distinct things. We have sem and semjung. We have, when we say mind, we imply there's an awareness there, but we also imply there's various mental operations happening. Now, our computer sitting here, that can run its various programs, but our computer is not conscious and aware. We, the operators, sitting here looking at the monitor screen and with the keyboard in front of us, we supply the awareness, the consciousness for the shepa. So it's the same way with our mind. Our initial awareness, or our yeshe or rikpa, becomes then mixed up with the computer programs, and we get dushe. And this limits then our original rikpa, which is our intrinsic awareness, and it becomes namshe, or discursive awareness, discursive consciousness, which is awareness mixed up with mental processes and operations and so on. And we invoke these various programs. So then we out of this we make a recognizable perception. Now this happens very fast, it seems almost instantaneously to us, because it's a habit. As I say, unless we're looking at something that we're not familiar with, we see something like a book, we all know what a book is, we have the name for it, and so on. We all have the idea of how you use a book, and so on. So this is a secondary process. The primary process is yeshe. After that, we get the various processes of the mind, the dushe, and then we relate ourselves as a subject and personally to this object. This is called dakzin. This is a grasping at a self. We place that in relationship to ourselves. We like books, we hate books, or whatever. And then we may have all kinds of further namtok or thoughts about this. So usually we're living at this fourth level. It happens very quickly and we're there, but only through meditation practice can we discover these more basic and primitive levels and actually get at what is meant by yeshe. Okay, the whole process in Dzogchen is to get at the foundation of all this. And so we speak in terms of Kunchi and Rigpa, referring to the Semni. The basic distinction we make in Dzogchen is between Sem, mind, this mental process I've just been discussing, and Semni, which we can translate as the nature of mind. Now, the nature of the mind is fundamental. It's the matrix and base for operations of the mind. And so it's often invisible to us because we are distracted and enchanted by all these operations of mind. Only by temporarily getting the mind to stop or shut down are we able to glimpse what lies beyond it and beneath it, which is semni, the nature of mind. And this is what is distinguished here, as I said, these Rushan exercises, that here samsara means mind. Samsara is not just this cycle of death and rebirth, which we've been going through since time without beginning. It's also the way our mind works. Samsara means kowa, to go round and around. Our mind is all the time going round and around, being very busy and distracted, and so then we don't see the center of our being. We're always looking here and there instead of within ourselves. So the Rushan exercises are in aid of showing us in our experience what is mind. And then once we discover what is mind, we have the possibility of going beyond mind to discover what is the nature of mind. The nature of mind is like a clear mirror which can reflect everything that is set before it. And the mirror has this capacity to reflect. So the nature of the mind has this capacity to be aware of whatever rises into consciousness. This capacity is what we mean as rigpa. And the spacious aspect of the nature of the mind is called kunchi, the basis of everything. And this awareness or clarity aspect of the mind is called rigpa, or intrinsic awareness. And as I said, they are inseparable, yermet. And to discover this in our immediate experience is the whole purpose of practicing Dzogchen. Now, in the Bonpo tradition, we have four principal transmissions of Dzogchen. The first is according to a continuous uninterrupted transmission, also known as Nyenju. So this is represented by the Zhangjung Nyenju. I explained that this transmission comes from Taparitsa to Jerpong and Nansha Lepo. And then, because he subdued the king of Tibet, he was able to transmit this to his principal disciples. There was two, an old man, a young boy. And so then it passed through the six Mahasiddhas, or great masters of Zhangjung, down into the ninth or beginning of the 10th century, let's say 10th century, to Panchen Tsempo. He was a Zhangzhungpa, and he lived in northern Tibet, but he had two Tibetan disciples, Lindrup Mutur, who was a great tantrika and magician, a married lama, all this, and a young boy, Shenchen Latse. And he transmitted the teachings to them, but they didn't speak the Zhangjung language, so he translated the precepts of the Zhangjung Nyenju into the Tibetan language. Now, in those days, they didn't necessarily have paper, which was invented by the Chinese in about the 9th or 10th century. So these original Zhangjung texts were written on pieces of wood in the Zhangjung alphabet, the Maryik, as it's called. And since you can only carry so much wood around with you, you wanted very brief statements of the teaching. So therefore, they're precepts, very things, which are then, they key your memory, these essential points, you remember them, and then they expand outward. It invokes the rest of the teaching in your memory. So Panchen Chempo transmitted this to these two Tibetan disciples in the Tibetan language. And then it split into two lineages. One was just the transmission of these precepts, and the other was more extended explanation from the experience of previous lamas, which is known as the experiential transmission. And they were preserved among different masters. But in the 11th century, they were brought together again by a lama from Dolpo, who belonged to the Yangdern Sherab Gyaltsen, to the Yangal family. And he collected them in various places in western Tibet, in Nepal, Mustang, and so on, and then sat down together with his master, Kundol, and then wrote them all out. And there were a couple lamas from Kham who came at that time and helped them. And this put the Zhangjung Nyenju more or less into its present form, in which we nowadays find it. All right, this is a continuous lineage, a Nyenju, oral transmission. The other is the discontinuous interrupted transmission, which is known as hidden treasure texts or dharmas. So here there are three others, and these are divided into the southern treasures and into the central treasures, depending on what part of Tibet they will found. Now, the next system or transmission of Dzogchen is known as Atri, which means a guide to the primordial state. Is the bija mantra of the primordial state. And this comes from a lama of the Meyu family. So Myrdhin means the teacher from the Meyu family. Gongtse is his name. And he largely drew from the terma of Shenchen Luga, and this was the Gapagukor. I'm going to have to take a quick break. For me, right?